The little girl's fingers barely reached around Bo Ryland's coat sleeve, but her grip held the desperation of someone who understood death. The Texas sun hammered down on the border livestock market, turning dust into powder that clung to every surface like guilt. Wooden pens stretched across the baked earth, cattle lowing in some hogs, grunting in others, and in the shadowed corners where decent folks didn't look people. Women mostly, immigrants with hollow cheeks and rope burns on their wrists, the kind nobody bid on anymore, the kind that disappeared after sundown when the market closed and consciences went to sleep. Bo moved past the pens with purpose, his weathered boots kicking up small clouds with each step. 37 years had carved lines around his eyes, and a horse that didn't survive the same storm that took his family had left him with a permanent hitch in his right leg. 5 winters had passed since he'd buried his wife. 2 months later, he'd laid their daughter Clara beside her. Since then, silence had been his only companion on a ranch that echoed with ghosts. He'd come for horse medicine, nothing more. But small fingers tugged at his coat. "You don't have to take me," the child whispered in broken English, her voice catching on words too heavy for someone barely 4 years old. "Just take my mama." Bo turned. Brown eyes too wide for such a small face stared up at him. Her dress hung in tatters, knees scraped raw black hair tangled with dust and desperation. One tiny finger pointed toward the shaded side of the corral, where a woman slumped against a splintered post. The woman's golden skin had turned ashen. Rope burns circled her wrists like bloody bracelets. Her lip was split jaw, purple with fresh bruising, one eye swollen completely shut. She hadn't moved in the time Bo had been watching. "Is that your mama?" he asked quietly. The girl nodded. "She hasn't eaten. I gave her my bread. All of it. 2 days." Her small chest heaved. "They said if no one buys her today, they'll take her somewhere bad." Bo crouched down until his eyes met hers. "What's her name?" "Lena. She's my mama." Tears carved clean tracks through the grime on her cheeks. "Please, just take her." The slaver lounging nearby perked up when Bo approached the pen, a fly swatter tapping against his knee like a metronome, counting down to darkness. "You looking to make a purchase, mister, on my—" Bo pulled a leather pouch from his coat. Gold coins spilled across the rickety table with a sound like rain on a tin roof. "I'll take both." The slaver's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "Both?" Bo nodded toward the child still clinging to his coat. "Girl comes too." The man leaned forward, fingers dancing over the coins. "Well, now you just bought yourself a whole mess of trouble, cowboy." Bo lifted the girl, gently settling her against his side. Her arms circled his neck without sound. Then, careful as handling spun glass, he cut Lena down from the ropes and carried her across the dust, while nobody spoke and nobody looked away. Somewhere in the silence, as his boots carried them from shadow into sunlight, the little girl whispered against his collar, "Thank you for taking both." Bo didn't answer, but his arms tightened around them like a promise. The ride to Bo's ranch stretched 15 miles through rolling hills that held secrets in their shadows. Rosita pressed against his side on the saddle, her small hands knotted in his shirt like anchors. Lena lay wrapped in his saddle blanket behind them, secured gently so the horse's movement wouldn't jar her broken body. She hadn't stirred since the market. Bo's land nestled in a fold of cottonwoods where silence grew thick as honey. No neighbors, no visitors, no voices except the wind through grass that remembered his daughter's laughter. The cabin still smelled of wood smoke and leather, its floors worn smooth by footsteps that no longer came. He carried Lena to the small bedroom painted pale blue, where Clara's wooden toys still gathered dust on the windowsill. Scuffed shoes waited beneath the bed. On the nightstand framed in oak, a gap-toothed girl smiled while holding a lamb. Bo laid Lena on the quilt as if the room might shatter from too much life. Rosita stood in the doorway, eyes wide as moons. "She's burning," the child whispered, touching her own forehead. "We'll get that down." Bo boiled water, crushed willow bark with molasses, cleaned the rope burns with hands that remembered gentleness from another lifetime. Rosita climbed onto the bed, taking the damp cloth he offered. "Mama," she whispered, dabbing her mother's fevered brow. "Mama, wake up. I'm here." For 2 days, death circled the room like a patient vulture. Bo dozed in a chair by the door, rifle across his lap boots, never leaving his feet. Rosita curled at the foot of the bed, small fingers clutching her mother's ankle through the quilt. On the third morning, while Bo changed the cloth on Lena's wrists, her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened like shutters torn free by wind. Dark brown, sharp, afraid. "It's all right," Bo said quietly. "You're safe now." Lena struggled upright, pain flaring across her features. Her hand flew to bruise ribs. "Where's Rosita?" A small bundle shot from the corner. Mama! Rosita launched herself onto the bed arms, circling Lena's neck. Lena gasped, not from pain this time, but relief so sharp it cut deeper than any blade. Her arms wrapped around the girl until they both trembled. Bo stepped back, giving them space that felt sacred. In the kitchen, he stared at his hands. Nicked dirt stain built for fencing and branding. But for 3 days, they'd done something different. Something that mattered. Through the thin wall came sounds he hadn't heard in 5 years. A mother's sob, a daughter's giggle. 2 notes in a song he'd thought was finished forever. A scream shattered the morning quiet like glass against stone. Bo dropped the feed bucket and ran, boots drumming against hard earth heart, hammering against his ribs. The front door hung open, torn free like a wound. Inside, chaos reigned. Lena stood in the blue bedroom, wild-eyed and panting, hair tangled across her face. A wooden hairbrush clutched in her hand like a weapon raised high and trembling. Clean cotton blouse rose and fell with each ragged breath. Her wrists, still ringed with purple bruises, held strength now. And fury. "Stay away," she shouted, voice thick with raw fear. "I swear to God, if you come near me." Bo raised both hands, palms open. "It's all right, you're safe." But Lena couldn't hear him through the storm in her bones. She lunged. The brush cracked against his shoulder. Again, again. Each strike wasn't meant to hurt him. It was meant to prove she wasn't helpless anymore. "You bought me," she cried, voice splintering like dry wood. "You think that gives you rights that I'm yours now? Just another thing on your land." Bo didn't flinch, didn't defend, didn't speak. When her breath finally hitched and her arm dropped with exhaustion, Bo met her gaze and said one word. "No." Then he turned and walked out. Lena collapsed to her knees, shoulders shaking with more than fear. Shame, confusion, the crushing weight of not knowing who to trust anymore. From behind the door, a small shadow stirred. Rosita stepped into the room, barefoot, small hands tugging at her nightdress hem. She walked carefully to her mother, knelt beside her, touched her arm with gentleness that didn't belong to someone so young. "He sleeps on the floor," Rosita whispered. "He never touches." Lena blinked. "What?" "He makes soup and he brushes my hair, but he sleeps on the floor every night by the door. I see him." For the first time, Lena noticed the folded blanket and pillow tucked near the doorframe, half hidden, easy to miss. Bo had never entered the room without knocking. She'd thought it was because he didn't care. Now she realized it was because he did. Her gaze drifted to the small table by the oil lamp. A framed photograph sat there, faded by time. A little girl with missing front teeth held a lamb in her arms, beaming like captured sunshine. Next to it lay a carefully folded blanket embroidered at the edge in green thread. "Clara." That night, Bo brought a tray of food. Lena didn't speak, but she nodded when he set it down. He didn't linger, just nodded back and closed the door gently behind him. When she turned off the lamp, she didn't lock the door. She didn't feel like she had to. The sun hung high when they came. 3 men rode up the long path, dust kicking behind their horses like ghosts. At the front, a tall man in a leather duster dismounted first, followed by 2 others with rifles slung across their backs. Their boots struck ground, heavy and sure, like they owned the dirt beneath. Bo walked out of the barn, wiping grease from his hands. He said nothing. The tall one smirked. "Name's Doyle. We're here on business." He held up a stained piece of paper. "We've come to collect merchandise. Girl named Lena. Property of Mr. Marcato. Got the papers right here." Bo glanced at the parchment, crude forgery smeared with ink and arrogance. "I bought her." "No," Doyle said, stepping closer. "You bought time. She belongs to us now. We ain't here to stir trouble. Just hand her over." Bo's eyes flicked toward the porch where curtains barely shifted. Lena was watching. Rosita clung to her skirts. "Get off my land," the second man sneered. "Or what?" Bo stepped forward. His hands were empty, but tension coiled in his body like a loaded spring. "I paid gold for her. Now I'll pay blood if I must." Doyle laughed. "You must think you're some kind of hero." In one swift motion, the man behind Doyle reached for his rifle. Bo moved faster. He spun a right, pulled a lever hidden behind the fence post. A shotgun fell into his hands from the hollowed rail. The blast ripped through air. The second man went down screaming. The other 2 scrambled. Doyle drew and fired. Bo staggered back as the bullet tore across his upper arm. Blood bloomed against his shirt. Lena screamed. Rosita cried out from inside the house. Bo dropped to one knee, cocked the shotgun, and fired at their feet. Doyle cursed, ducking behind his horse. "Next one takes your head off," Bo growled. They mounted fast, dragging their wounded man across the saddle. and fled into the horizon with dust in their eyes and death behind them. Bo stayed on one knee, blood dripping through his sleeve. Then the front door burst open. Lena rushed to him, skirts trailing, dropping to the ground with a gasp. Her hands shook, but she pressed them to his arm, tearing the shirt away. "You're bleeding," she whispered. He grunted. "Not too bad." "You're a fool. You could have been killed." "I've been dead before," he said softly, "when I lost my daughter, but today I'm alive." She froze. Then without a word, she pressed a cloth to the wound and wrapped his arm as best she could. "That stings. You deserve worse." But her voice trembled. He looked at her. "You didn't have to come out here." "I did, because you didn't have to fight for me, but you did." Inside, Rosita clung to the doorway, watching as her mother knelt in dust beside the man who had shed blood for her. For the first time, Lena's hands didn't shake when she touched him. The kitchen smelled of blood and boiled cloth. Bo sat shirtless at the wooden table, his right arm resting atop a folded towel. The bullet had passed clean through, but the damage it left was far from neat. Flesh around the entry wound swelled red and angry, oozing with each movement. Lena stood beside him with a kitchen knife in one hand, half-empty bottle of whiskey in the other. Her fingers trembled as she uncorked the bottle and poured it onto cloth, then directly over the wound. The sharp scent filled the air. The hiss of liquid meeting torn flesh made Bo grunt, but he didn't flinch. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked quietly. Lena nodded. "I've seen worse." Though her voice betrayed tremor of memory, she leaned closer. "I need to cut a little, to clean it out." Bo looked at the knife, then back at her. His eyes held no fear, only trust. "You don't have to. I want to." Their eyes met. For the first time, neither looked away. She tore a strip of linen, rolled it tight, pressed it between his teeth. "Bite." The blade kissed flesh. Bo's whole body tensed. A groan rumbled from his throat, muffled by cloth, but he stayed still. Lena's hands moved quickly, palms slick with sweat, but motions precise. She cut away damaged tissue dabbed with whiskey-soaked cloth, pressed clean gauze against the exit wound. Her fingers worked with quiet urgency, driven not by fear, but by care. When it was over, she wrapped the wound with the last of the gauze, tying it tight with firm knots. Her breath came in short gasps. Bo leaned back, eyes shut, chest glistening with sweat. He spat the cloth into the basin and exhaled slowly. "You've done that before." Lena was wiping her hands when she answered. "I had a brother, back in Sonora. He broke things. Bones mostly. Got into fights with boys twice his size. I used to patch him up." Bo opened his eyes. Silence fell, but it was different this time. Not cold, not tense, just quiet. Lena turned and caught sight of the photo on the mantel. The little girl with soft curls and a lamb in her lap. "She looked like Rosita," she said. Bo nodded. "Her name was Clara." What happened?" "Fever. Took her in 3 days." "And your wife?" "Gone a month later. Couldn't live in a house that didn't have her voice in it." Lena's gaze softened. Her eyes dropped to the table, to the empty space between them. Slowly, her hand rested there, open, not reaching, just waiting. "She was lucky," she said. Bo frowned. "How do you mean, to be loved like that?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, with deliberate care, Bo reached forward and placed his hand atop hers. His fingers were rough, calloused. Hers were thinner, worn from labor, from chains. But they fit. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked into his eyes, and for the first time since she'd been chained, since the cage, since the auction block, Lena didn't feel the weight of a man's gaze as something she needed to fear. She felt it as something soft, something human, something she wanted to return. "You should rest," she whispered, her thumb brushing over his knuckles. But she didn't move, and neither did he. They just sat there, scarred, battered, stitched together, not by duty, but by choice, by something stronger than survival, by the beginning of trust. 3 months later, the late afternoon sun stretched golden fingers across the Texas plains. Bo walked beside a small spotted mare. As Rosita bounced in the saddle, her little legs barely reaching the stirrups he'd adjusted just for her. "Easy now," Bo said. "Keep your hands steady." Rosita giggled, fingers gripping the reins like they held the most important job in the world. "Like this? Just like that?" Bo nodded, one hand lightly on the mare's side, the other ready to catch her if she slipped. "You're doing better than most grown folks." Rosita's face lit up with pride. Her cheeks were flushed from wind hair undone in wisps around her temples. She looked down at him, smile wide, then fell quiet. Something in her gaze shifted. She reached forward and wrapped her arms around Bo's neck. He caught her, reflexively lifting her from the saddle. She nestled into his chest, small hands curling into his shirt. Then she whispered, "Can I call you Papa now?" Beau's breath caught. He froze, arms tightening around her. The planes went silent. The breeze paused. Even the mare turned her head as if waiting for his answer. But Beau said nothing. His throat burned. His chest ached in the deepest corner he thought had long gone numb. So he just held her. Held her like the question didn't need words. Held her like the answer had already been yes. From the edge of the fence line, Lena watched. She'd come out with a basket of fresh apples ready to call them in for supper. But she stopped when she saw Beau lifting Rosita from the horse, the girl's arms looped around his neck. Then she heard it, her daughter's voice small and full of hope. "Can I call you Papa now?" Lena didn't breathe. And when she saw Beau's silence, saw the way he just held Rosita, face buried against her wild curls, Lena felt something shift inside her, something break and something heal. The apples fell from her hands, forgotten in the grass. She sank to the ground, knees folding beneath her palms, pressing into dirt. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and quiet, streaming down her cheeks. She cried for all the nights Rosita had slept afraid, for all the mornings she'd woken without safety, for the months Lena had feared no man could be trusted. And now here was this man, worn, weathered, silent, carrying her daughter as if she were made of glass and gold. That night, after Rosita had fallen asleep, curled in the quilt Beau had brought from town, Lena stood in the doorway of his room. He sat by the window lantern, casting flickers across his face, the bandage on his shoulder freshly changed. She stepped in without knocking. "She called you Papa." Beau turned slowly. He looked tired, but not from pain. "She did. I heard." Silence grew between them, but not the hard kind. This one was gentle waiting. "She never called anyone that before," Lena whispered. Beau nodded, his hand resting on the edge of the chair. "I didn't know what to say." "You didn't need to." She walked closer, knelt beside him. "You brought her back to life." Her hand found his. "And me too." He didn't speak. He just lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her fingertips like they were sacred. The sun hung low over the Texas horizon when Beau stood by the old forged sleeves, rolled up, eyes steady on the small brass ring cooling in his palm. He'd made it from the firing pin of the revolver that once saved Lena's life. It was rough, not perfect, but honest, strong. When he walked back to the cabin, Lena was outside brushing Rosita's hair. Her white dress fluttered in the breeze, simple, soft, the sleeves slightly uneven hem, hand-stitched with effort, not elegance. Yet it suited her more than any silk ever could. She turned when she saw him, breath-catching. Beau approached slowly. No crowd, no preacher yet. Just the three of them standing in a world they'd somehow survived. He didn't kneel. He didn't speak long. He just held out the ring in his calloused hand and said, voice low and steady, "I lost everything." He paused, eyes not leaving hers. "But you and Rosita, you gave me something to live for." Lena's hand trembled as she took the ring. Her fingers brushed his. She looked down at the brass, then at her wrist where the scar from rope still faintly marked her skin. Then she looked up and nodded. "Yes." By late afternoon, the field was dressed in petals. Rosita skipped ahead, scattering blooms from a basket nearly her size. Her curls bounced her joy-filling air like music. Lena walked slowly behind her daughter, holding a bouquet of prairie blossoms tied with twine. Her dress caught the sun. Her eyes were bright, hands steady. The scar on her wrist was visible. So was the one on her collarbone. But she didn't hide them. There was nothing shameful in survival. She was walking proof of it. When Lena reached Beau at their makeshift altar, nothing more than 2 crates and a linen sheet, she whispered, "I never dreamed I'd wear white again." Beau shook his head. "You earned it." The preacher said his words. Beau and Lena said theirs. The kiss was simple, sweet, slow. 2 broken things finally whole. When they turned to walk back down the petal path, Rosita ran to them and grabbed both their hands. "Now we're all 3, she said, beaming. Beau looked at Lena. Lena, head high, heart full, smiled through tears. "Yes, mijita, all 3. Years passed like seasons, some harsh, some gentle, all of them together. They found rhythm in small things, burned eggs eaten without complaint, evening stitching by lamplight, drawings pinned beside the hearth, showing 3 figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. At church, Lena sat beside Beau, her scarred wrist no longer hidden by sleeves. No one dared whisper anymore. Rosita sat proudly between them, coloring during sermons. One afternoon, Lena found an old dress in the dusty loft, Beau's daughter's, yellow and soft. She pressed it to her chest and wept. That evening, she gave it to Rosita, who twirled in fading light while Beau watched from the porch, hands folded, eyes glassy. "You okay?" Lena asked softly, stepping beside him. He nodded. I think for the first time in a long while, yes. They built new fences that fall, painted the barn, repaired a broken swing. Bo carved a wooden plaque for the porch, La Casa de Esperanza, the House of Hope. Lena kissed him when he nailed it up. One crisp morning, as first frost kissed the fields, Lena stood at the edge of their land and whispered to the wind in Spanish a prayer of gratitude, a goodbye to fear, a welcome to whatever came next. Bo came up behind her, wrapped arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. You still scared? He asked. She shook her head. Not anymore. Inside the house above the hearth hung the latest drawing from Rosita, a family of 3 hearts drawn over their chests. Below it, Lena had written in careful script, Home. I was trampled, branded, sold like cattle, forgotten like dust. But he saw more. The little girl who begged him to save me, she gave me life. And the man who stayed quiet when others shouted, he gave me a future. Now I see it too. I am not owned. I am not broken. I am loved. I am home.